Rand from Crypto Banter is questioning the quietness of the Cosmos ecosystem. It's also been underwhelming if you look at price performance. The sentiment is at an all-time low. I personally believe, of course, that this is where the opportunity lays. And while I have questioned my own thesis over the past year and a half, 2 years, especially in the last like 6 to 8 months more than ever, I always come to the same conclusion, which is that the Cosmos ecosystem will have its time. Atom as an asset will have its time. And at one point, we're going to go on this revenge rally. Because let's be honest, what Cosmos still has is a hardcore community of believers, many of which have been around in Cosmos a lot longer than I have been, because I only got into it sometime in late 2020. But there's people that have been around since 2019, 2018, absolute OGs out there. And we are the hardcore believers. We are the ones that are sticking through ride or die cosmonauts, ride or die atom holders, stakers, and believers. And yes, we have gone through a lot. The Terra collapse was a catastrophic event that sucked in a lot of liquidity and dried out the ecosystem across all DeFi applications. But guess what it also did? It hardened the ecosystem. It made it more resilient, more robust. And that was one of the things that really matured the technology. On the other hand, we also had a lot of infighting. We had a lot of founder drama. We had a lot of teams accusing each other, a lot of internal stuff. On-chain governance was definitely also a main factor or reason why we had so much drama. But it still, in my opinion at least, also contributed to making Cosmos as an ecosystem, as a community, as a technology more robust and resilient. And now, in 2025, the ecosystem definitely looks a lot different than it does in 2022. If you look at the list right now, you see Celestia is up there, Saga is up there, dYdX is now full on Cosmos SDK chain. The Cosmos Hub, of course, still the absolute OG chain. Nilian, a brand new one. Babylon, a brand new one. So you see new players, and you see that price-wise, especially today, we're seeing a bit of relief, even though, of course, the ecosystem collectively got wrecked and the price went down only for a very long time. So this is, at best, a bit of relief, but it is a nice relief, and it's a nice little bounce here that also shows relative strength and shows Cosmos is still here. And while it has been quiet, I think this is exactly where things might shift, might turn around, and we might actually go on this rally that we all desperately deserve as Cosmos believers, as mid-curve cryptonauts. We deserve this rally because we are probably the most fundamental, the most value-driven ecosystem in all of crypto. And we have not given in to the noise. We have not abandoned and left and chased all the meme coins. We've stick to our values, and we're still here. And I think that's why that is the sole reason why we deserve this rally, not to mention all the work that has been done by many of these teams behind the scenes. Also, we have done our best with the Cito Zone, with Stakecito, with customers, and here on the channel as well, to contribute in keeping the community informed, keeping ourselves informed, and also sharing the latest updates in the ecosystem. So that is the state today. But well, what I actually want to talk about is a potential new direction for Atom that also might coincide with the recently passed Clarity Act in the US, and also the entire past 6 years that the Cosmos Hub has been on mainnet, how it actually might turn out to be one of the biggest strengths and benefits for the Cosmos Hub and Atom as an asset, right? Because one feature, one characteristic that the Cosmos Hub did not have for the larger part of the first 6 years of its existence is a top to bottom leadership, a top down leadership that was dictating every single spend, every single roadmap item, every single decision on what the chain is, what it does, what it represents. But in contrast, the Cosmos Hub has always been a bottom-up, community-driven, with full decentralized on-chain governance, which was part of why we had a lot of infighting and drama. But on the flip side, it also meant from day one, with decentralized decision-making. And that might actually turn out to be one of the biggest strengths and features, because let's be honest, nowadays, cryptocurrencies, coins, blockchains, no one really cares much about decentralization anymore. The Cosmos Hub is actually one of the very, very few truly decentralized chains out there. And yes, while we do have this new leadership now, that we also celebrated this acquisition of Skip Protocol, now fresh new leadership that is actually sitting at the steering wheel, the guys that took it over, Mag and Barry, they're not the inventors, not the founders, they're not the by far largest stakeholders out there. In fact, there might actually be larger stakeholders of Atom. I'm not sure if that is the case, but the Interchain Foundation, which is the backing entity of Interchain Labs, of which Mag and Barry are the co-CEOs of, only holds less than 15 million atoms at a price of around $4, where it is right now. That's only $60 million in Atom for the main foundation in Cosmos. And considering that the total supply is around 460 million atoms, the Interchain Foundation only holds a few percentages of that, which is very uncommon. Most crypto foundations Solana, for example, they hold large amounts of their own token in their treasuries, 10, 20, maybe 30, even 40%. And some of the new ones, probably like 60, 70, 80% of their own token supply, which gives them control, power, decision-making, authority, and all these kind of things, right? In Cosmos Hub and Atom, this has actually never really been that case. In fact, when they did the fundraiser in 2017, 2018, they sold only 10% of the Atom supply through the foundation, and they sold another 10% through All-in Bits, which is a company that is now owned by Kwon, the original inventor and founder of the Cosmos Hub, Atom, IBC, Cosmos in general, alongside Ethan Buckman, the co-founder. But Kwon, who is the CEO at All-in Bits, now has forked Atom into Atom 1 and might also have, swapped larger amounts of Atom into Atom 1, which is a different token, a different ticker, a different L1. So Kwon has forked away the original founder. Ethan Buckman has entirely stepped out and stepped away from the Interchain Foundation as well to focus on his other company, Informal Systems and Cycles, which is a whole different product. So the two founders are out, basically. While it is refreshing to see that the Interchain Foundation is taking accountability finally for Atom as well, it is also important to understand that they do not have the full decision-making power. But then again, we will see what they actually want to contribute and what they actually want to propose as a direction for the Cosmos Hub from their side. Anyways, Rob pointing out, marketing director here at Cosmos, that the Cosmos Hub and Atom might actually be the most qualified blockchain under the Clarity Act. First and foremost, due to its decentralized governance model. And that is also one of the main criteria, is the decision-making, that there is not one company that is in full control or a group of people, but instead there's transparent community-driven governance. And that is absolutely the case for the Cosmos and Atom, even if the Interchain Foundation or Interchain Labs team would now contribute more and double down on BD and more integrations, which is something they have already started doing. But I think considering that they do not have full decision-making power, they're still on-chain decentralized governance and decision-making, plus also they only hold a tiny amount of Atom relative to, other contenders out there, other chains and foundations. I think this is not going to change a lot. Well, Mike also shared this CCN, no, this is not CNN, but CCN report, which is basically a ChatGPT prompt that was asking whether blockchains out there or which blockchains out there are qualified as mature under the new US Clarity Act's guidelines. And ChatGPT is saying that the Cosmos Hub and Atom, alongside Tezos, XTC, Monero, Dogecoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, is decentralized enough to be qualified as mature according to the Clarity Act. The explanation here is that validator governance is decentralized, which is the case, and the Interchain Foundation no longer exercises control, which is probably going to change a little bit, even though, again, we still have full on-chain governance, decentralized, and the Interchain Foundation does not have anywhere near majority stake in Atom. And let's be honest, if Ethereum falls under that category, then Cosmos is not going to have any issues because Ethereum Foundation still has a lot of contributions. They still have a huge organization with researchers, developers, builders. They have an entire team for DEF CON, which I think is like 20, 30, 40 people full-time. They're doing a lot of the initiatives and funding for global events all over the world, which is something that we in Cosmos do not have, to that degree at least. For Cosmos, for example, which is my company that is in my name independent from the Interchain Foundation or Interchain Labs, while they act as sponsors and do support us, they are not owning that brand. They're not owning that company or organization. And I think that's very different, right? For the Ethereum Foundation, they own DEF CON. They are DEF CON. I think that's a very big differentiator, and also shows that Cosmos, in fact, is even more decentralized when it comes to that. This Revolut integration is very cool, which is not only for Atom, but also for OSMO. Note that underneath they have integrated Kiln as their validator. And Kiln is a very institutional validator, also big on Fetch.ai. I think they have over 130 million Fed tokens delegated. So massive validator, institutional validator. We with Stakecito, we're more on the retail side. Now, while all this might sound interesting and promising, we always have to keep an eye also on the delegations that are occurring on the Cosmos Hub. And one of the things I've noticed recently is that we have seen larger undelegations happening again after the bonded ratio has been going up only since 6 months. It bottomed out at around 53% and then went up to above 60%. Well, now we're back to around 59, even below 59%. And we're seeing larger undelegations that are becoming liquid in around or less than 3 weeks, because the unbonding time for the Cosmos Hub and Atom is around 21 days. So 14 million Atom right now are currently unbonding. You can also see from which validators. So the largest unbondings are happening on Coinbase custody, Binance, Upbit, Coreum Exchange, Trust Nodes, Cosmos Data. So more like institutional or centralized exchanges. Those alone make up around half of the undelegations that are currently happening. So that's just one thing to keep an eye on. On the other hand, we still have a 16.77% staking APR for Atom. The inflation is currently maxed out at 10%. Remember, it's a dynamic inflation rate between 7 and 10%, pegged to the bonded ratio of 2/3. So if it's below 2/3, the inflation will increase towards a roof of 10%. If it's above 2/3, which means 67%, it will go gradually down to the floor of 7%. And the only way this could be changed is if there was an on-chain governance proposal to adjust those parameters. So the Initial Labs or Interchain Foundation team does not have control and sole decision-making power on that, but it is the community to vote on that, which means community of validators and retail holders. Now, that's that. On the other hand, we're seeing the Cosmos technology stack get more and more integrated left and right. And also the Cosmos Twitter account is finally bull posting a bit more, which is good to see. And also to showcase out there that Cosmos tech is integrated absolutely everywhere. And this is also one of the main goals we want to achieve for this year's Cosmoverse. In fact, we're talking to a lot of big names, institutions. We're also speaking to a lot of governments. Of course, the event is taking place in Croatia this year, so it's a natural fit of a government to speak to. But then we also have confirmed Anina Milanovic from the Serbian SEC, from the Serbian Securities Commission. So we already have participation from the Serbian government, and we'll probably have a lot more Serbian government representatives from different angles, different verticals. And the same counts for many other governments in that region, and of course also globally. So that is what we want to showcase, and at the same time also some of the top builders and chains and projects, right? OKX, which I think many people don't really know. OKX has built a Cosmos chain, so has Binance, partially with their BNB chain, right? That is originally utilizing Tendermint and the Cosmos SDK for governance and validator management. So BNB chain is also built using Cosmos technology. Kronos, of course, that's one that I think everyone is familiar with, and many others, right? I think BitGet also has a Cosmos SDK blockchain, but yeah, centralized exchanges, AI leaders like Fetch, Akash Network, RWA companies, right? Like Ondo is also going to launch a Cosmos chain this year. Ondo Finance, massive RWA tokenization player from the US. Tether has announced their chain. Stable, also a Cosmos chain. So all these chains are coming. And the question is now, how can Atom be positioned to capture value here? And that is something that the Initial Labs team is probably going to propose to the community, and then it will be subject also to community reception, market demand, of course, but also on-chain governance decision-making in case there's something that needs to adjust the underlying code base of the Cosmos hubs. On a bigger picture, if we zoom out, I think next week is going to be a big week, not only because we have these two bills that passed, the Genius Act and also the Clarity Act, but also ETH is ripping, and ETH is potentially ripping as a result of that, but also seeing ETH outperform Bitcoin, at least in a very short term, is very bullish for altcoins, right? And it's always the same old Bitcoin front runs everyone until everyone thinks, oh, altcoins are never going to run. And then ETH starts running, and then everyone's like, oh, ETH is still there. And then all the ETH people are saying, oh, you guys, your altcoins, you're never going to recover. But once all the alts start running, it's going to be kiss and goodbye, and everyone that has been around will be crazily rewarded in a very big time. That is my personal core belief. Obviously, going to see how that plays out, how that ages. If that happens in August, in October, in December, or sometime next year, who knows? At this point, to be honest, I think we've been cooked for the past 3.5 years, especially if you look at the Atom chart, right? We've been falling off of this cliff in April of 2022, which was the time when also Terra collapsed. I think Terra was sometime in May then. But yeah, we fell off this cliff, and since then, we have only gone down, and it's been brutal, it's been exhausting, it's been tiresome, it's been frustrating, but we're still here. We have been here when Atom went to $45. We have been here when Atom, at least me, was at $5 sometime in late 2020. And we're also now here when Atom is back at $5 in 2025. So still here, still standing. Cosmos is going to have its time. We'll all have our time. Cosmos is going to be amazing. That's my personal conviction. And you might call me delusional. In fact, yes, I also think I'm delusional. And I think I have to be delusional to be all in to this degree after so many years that the market has told me, like, man, it's just going down only, right? But I survived a similar phase like this in 2018, 19, and 20. The first half of 2020 was also brutal. And everyone was saying, like, man, these altcoins are never going to come back. But here we are. And I think we're going to see a similar phase coming up shortly here, especially in the Cosmos ecosystem, because it has the strongest builders community, most respected and most integrated, widely adopted technology. And that eventually is going to pay off. That eventually is going to be priced in. And right now it's not. So I think that's a big opportunity. But that's maybe just me. Maybe I'm wrong. Who the hell knows? But yeah, that's my word for Sunday. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I'll see you around. In fact, I want to give you some quick homework. Number one, go watch my interview with Scott Dykstra, co-founder at Space and Time, which is a non-Cosmos chain. In fact, it's a substrate chain, but one that I have also been stacking. So that's one, close ties to Microsoft, which I also talked about with Scott in this interview. And yeah, that's that. Grayscale also very bullish on Space and Time for some reason, which is interesting. Next week, also have an interview coming up with Ferran from XRP Ledger sidechain. He's the one who has built this sidechain on XRP on Ripple, using the Cosmos SDK and integrating also the Cosmos EVM. So interview coming up with Ferran. See you at Pierces, which is a company that is doing all of that. Coming next week, and many other interviews. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this one. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you very soon here on Cryptocito. Until then, stay safe and be good.